Coming in at number 10, we have Nebula, the adopted daughter of Thanos. While Nebula has always been a complex character with complicated motives no matter what version we're talking about, the Nebula of the comics had a much different role in the Infinity Saga than the one many are familiar with from the movies. In the original Infinity Gauntlet miniseries, Nebula was tortured by Thanos into becoming a half-dead, zombie-like creature, doomed to wander around Thanos' throne as punishment. However, when Thanos ascended to godhood and left his physical body after defeating much of the Marvel Universe's most powerful forces, Nebula found the strength to pull the gauntlet off of Thanos' arm and claim the power for herself. In her fury, she undid all of Thanos' actions, but nearly threatened to destroy the universe herself, before she was eventually defeated and had the gauntlet taken from her by Doctor Strange, Adam Warlock, and the Silver Surfer. Coming in at number 9, we have the Council of Reeds. While not commonly known as outright villains, the Council of Reeds have a complicated history with the Mr. Fantastic most commonly seen in Marvel Comics. A collection of Reed Richards from across the multiverse that have chosen to abandon their families and entire worlds behind in order to combine their intellect into one unified group, the Council of Reeds claim to do everything they do for the better of the multiverse, as their new home is in the expanse in between the different universes. All of this is possible due to the leaders of the Council of Reeds having taken the Infinity Gauntlets from their own realities and used them to create everything needed for their council to function. Incredibly smart but emotionally distant dudes with a trio of Infinity Gauntlets in their possession? What could possibly go wrong? Coming in at number 8, we have Magus, the arch enemy of Adam Warlock. Following the events of the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline, Adam Warlock separated his personality into a good and evil half, and in a twist that nobody could have seen coming, the evil half wound up getting out of control. Named Magus, this twisted version of Warlock used multiple cosmic cubes to launch a war against the Marvel Universe, creating evil doppelgangers to fight every superhero on the planet Earth. Magus eventually got his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet and was only able to be defeated after that point because Thanos had replaced the Soul Gem with a fake. Good job, Thanos. Totally makes up for all the other stuff you've done. Coming in at number 7, we have Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin. In the alternate what-if reality of Earth 14154, Norman Osborn discovered the existence of the Infinity Gauntlet while serving as the leader of Hammer. Ordering several other villains to assassinate members of the Illuminati, Norman was able to assemble all of the Infinity Stones and granted himself the name of the Goblin King before attacking Asgard alongside his newly powered-up army of Dark Avengers. Standing victorious, the only thing left for Norman to do was, interestingly enough, try to work out his father issues, bringing his deceased dad forward in time to see all that he had accomplished. But when his father reacted with only horror at what Norman had done, Norman obliterated him from the timeline, unintentionally removing himself as well, because if there's one thing comic books love, it's weird, timey-wimey paradoxes. Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Dr. Doom. On the alternate world of Earth 90-251, Victor Von Doom was able to hold on to the Beyonder's powers that he had briefly gained in the main Marvel universe during the Secret Wars crossover. With the strength of the Beyonder at his disposal, Doom was able to easily defeat an army of heroes assembled by Sue Storm, and was able to ascend to the level of godhood within this universe. Funnily enough, by the time he collected the Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet, he no longer even needed their strength. He simply wore the gauntlet as a trophy, showing that the former most powerful objects in the universe were now just trinkets to him. Coming in at number 5, we have the Ultimate Hulk. Now, while I personally believe the Hulk deserves to be called a hero more often than not, the version of Bruce Banner from the Ultimate Universe does have a nasty habit of going completely out of control on a more regular basis than the usual Marvel Universe. While imprisoned by S.H.I.E.L.D., the Hulk was visited by the Ultimate version of Kang the Conqueror, who gifted the Hulk 2 different Infinity Gauntlets capable of wielding the 8 stones of the Ultimate Universe, but at the moment only possessing 5 of them. Using the gauntlets, the Hulk was able to break free from his prison and bring the fight to the rest of the Ultimates team, showing that maybe locking up the Hulk isn't the greatest idea in the world. Coming in at number 4, we're hopping over to DC with Darkseid. That's right, the character that's often controversially compared to Thanos has actually wielded the Infinity Gauntlet himself during a particularly notable crossover. In the JLA/Avengers miniseries, important artifacts from both the Marvel and DC universe are spread throughout the multiverse and ordered to be collected by both the Avengers and the Justice League, with one of these artifacts, of course, being the Infinity Gauntlet. Unfortunately, its hiding place is on Darkseid's home of Apocalypse, and the evil ruler is already wearing the gauntlet. Luckily though, the Infinity Stones themselves wind up having no power in the DC universe, allowing the heroes an easier time in recovering the gauntlet, but the thought of Darkseid being allowed to take full control of the Infinity Stones is still an incredibly foreboding thought. Coming in at number 3, we have Ultron. In the Disney Plus series What If, Ultron is the final big bad of the first season, in an alternate universe where he's able to fulfill his plan of taking over Vision's body and uses the power of his single Infinity Stone to destroy this Earth's Avengers and cause a nuclear apocalypse. To make matters even worse, when this reality's Thanos arrives with the gauntlet and the other 5 Infinity Stones collected, Ultron is able to kill Thanos with ease and take the stones that he oh so kindly collected for him. This version of Ultron becomes so powerful that even the Watcher is forced to break his vow and form the Guardians of the Multiverse to stop him, as Ultron's ambitions have him beginning to conquer entire realities. Coming in at number 2, you know we can't have a list about the Infinity Gauntlet without giving Thanos a slot. And while the comic version of Thanos is obviously iconic and the main inspiration for all the various adaptations that would follow, my personal favorite version has to be the one from the MCU portrayed by Josh Brolin. This version of Thanos isn't lusting after death, but rather has gotten it stuck in his head that the only possible way to save the universe is to wipe out half the life in it. Thanos is obviously one of the more powerful villains in the entire Marvel multiverse, but the most chilling thing about the MCU version is just how calm and resigned to his task he is, especially in Infinity War. This is a guy that just wants to commit his cosmic genocide because he feels he has to, and then go settle down on a farm. And finally, coming in at our top spot, the one character more villainous than Thanos is Santa Claus. No, I'm not being a Scrooge, I love Christmas, but the Marvel Universe has actually had it that Santa Claus was briefly one of the most powerful villains to ever wield the Infinity Gauntlet. Following the disappearance of his reindeer, Santa asked the Avengers if he can borrow the Infinity Gauntlet in order to deliver all of his toys in one night. Unfortunately, this winds up being a bit too much for Santa to handle, and he goes mad with power, only finally being able to be stopped by a well-aimed snowball from Namor. It's debatable on whether this holiday one-off was a canon adventure or not, but at least now we always know that Thanos and Santa Claus have something in common.
Number 10. Wind. Wind is the name of the main character from the self-titled series, also of course named Wind. It comes from Boom Studios and was written by James Tynion IV with art by Michael Dalianos. Wind is a teenage hero who has always hidden the truth of his elven and magical heritage as a weird blood. His heritage grants him great power he's been hiding from his whole life in an attempt to fit in, being made to believe that magic is dangerous and basically turns people into monsters, or in some other way corrupts them. When he becomes too old to hide his pointed ears and who he is any longer, he is forced to either try and change or embrace who he really is. And in order to protect his friends against those who would hunt both him and them down, Wind ultimately embraces his magical side, unleashing powerful abilities. Wind has wings, can fly, and can communicate with forest-like spirits or sprites. He also has, like many other teen heroes, the power of friendship, which usually means he ends up making friends with powerful allies. I would say if you love the world of Avatar, you might also end up falling in love with both the character Wind and his series. It reminds me of Avatar, at least, in like the best way. Number 9. Lord Fanny. Lord Fanny is Hilda Morales, who was born as a boy but raised as a girl. She is a transsexual woman and one of the first trans heroes in comics. Lord Fanny was raised as a girl by her grandmother because only women in their culture could become witches, and her grandmother was a powerful witch who wanted to pass on her knowledge and power to Fanny. Although Fanny herself did choose to be a girl, if that makes sense. Lord Fanny is a member of the Invisibles team and was created by writer Grant Morrison and artist Steve Yoel. The Invisibles was a comic series that existed as part of DC's Vertigo imprint back when it was around. I miss Vertigo so much. The series began in 1994, and in issue 13 we'd learn more about Lord Fanny's origins and her very tragic backstory. Lord Fanny's such a cool character. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more cool, lesser known indie heroes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Quantum and Woody. You may have heard of Valiant's character Bloodshot, who recently got his own solo film, but what about all of their other superheroes? Quantum and Woody is a series and superhero duo from Valiant Comics. It was inspired by the superhero team-up series Power Man and Iron Fist, but is a lot more bizarre. The series itself was written by Christopher Priest, with art actually by the artist who did Power Man and Iron Fist. Pretty cool. Quantum and Woody are adoptive brothers who, after years of being estranged, are brought back together when their father mysteriously dies. While trying to figure out what really happened to him, they stumble upon superpowers. The catch? They must touch their power bands at least once every 24 hours to not only keep their powers, but also keep from losing their lives as well, as they would then no longer exist if they didn't touch their band. Quantum's powers are more defense-based, while Woody's are more offensive. Oh, and they also kind of have an animal sidekick, Vincent Van Gogh, who is even more bizarre than he already sounds. Just trust me. I don't want to spoil anything, but Vincent Van Gogh. What a goat. Number 7. Josephine. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series, which comes to us from Image Comics. Fatale is a supernatural noir-style comic created by the brilliant team-up of writer Ed Brubaker and artist Sean Phillips. Seriously, I love these two together. Some might argue that Jo isn't really a hero, as she's a little bit selfish, but in focusing on uncovering the mysteries of her own power and in trying to save herself, she does inevitably save others. In the long run, at least. There are a lot of people that end up being sacrificed along the way in order for Jo to stand a chance in defeating her enemies in the end. And also there are just straight up people being sacrificed along the way by her enemies who are attempting to track her down. So yeah, she kinda also gets a lot of people killed, but you know, it's not her fault. Jo's powers allow her to control all men who gaze upon her, with them being irresistibly attracted to her no matter who they are and no matter if she wants to influence them or not. Unless of course they are able to protect themselves against her influence with extremely powerful magic, which we only see from a couple characters really in the series. In other words, her power is pretty freaking strong. The only downside here, which is kind of the crux of it all, is that she can't fully control her powers. That is, she can't turn them off when she wants to, which ends up causing a lot of problems for Jo along the way, but I won't spoil any of that. Anyways, if you haven't read Fatale, it's now, I think, it's gonna be 10 years old soon, so go and read it, hurry up! Came out I think in 2012. That's when it started. Number 6. King Mob. King Mob is the leader of the Invisibles. He was once a horror writer who wrote under the pen name Kit Morrison. As the series The Invisibles is created by Grant Morrison, Mob is believed to be sort of a fictional stand-in for Morrison himself. King Mob's legal name was Gideon Starozowski, and he struggles with his alter persona, especially troubled by how violent he, as King Mob, can be. King Mob is not only a leader who wields power in that sense, because he's a leader, but also has experience with firearms and weapons, is a skilled martial artist and fighter, is psychic, can time travel, and employs the use of chaos magic. So, lots of cool things that he can do. Also, if you haven't read The Invisibles, it is really trippy. Go read it. If you like The Matrix, you'll probably like The Invisibles. If you like The Matrix and if you like Doom Patrol, which of course is also Grant Morrison. Not The Matrix, Doom Patrol. Number 5. Laura Wilson / Persephone. Laura Wilson is the main character of the Wicked and the Divine series from Image Comics. The series was created by writer Kieran Gillen and artist Jamie McKelvey. In this story, story, gods come to life, cyclically being kinda reincarnated. This is known as the recurrence. Laura herself is obsessed with the gods and the pantheon, who are all of course re-emerging at the time. She wants nothing more than to be a god herself. At least that is what she thinks she wants, until her wishes kind of come true. She is revealed to be Persephone, who is believed to be the final god to return during the recurrence. As Persephone, she can summon plants and vines and control them. She also seems to have some kind of control or influence over the underworld. Laura can also create fireballs and reveal to others past events, summoning visions of the past even if she was not present for those events. Number 4. Sludge. Sludge is a hero or anti-hero who comes to us initially from Malibu Comics and was created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Aaron Lopresti. Sludge was once Frank Hogue, a dirty NYPD police officer who accepted bribes in exchange for favors when it came to drug dealings. He was ordered by the crime boss he worked for, John Paul Marcello, to kill another likely dirtier cop. When Frank refused Marcello's request, Marcello had him killed instead. After being shot, a grenade went off, knocking him into a bucket of chemical waste. Who put that chemical waste there? The waste would merge with him after he was dumped into the sewers, turning him into the super-heroic monstrosity Sludge. Sludge possesses a healing factor and super strength. He could also kill or mutate his opponents with just a touch. Kinda turns them into sludge. It's pretty dark, really. Number 3. Radiant Yellow. We don't know that much about the newest Radiants, but we do know that they seem interested in protecting innocent people from whatever craziness is currently going on. Okay, hard to keep talking about all of this Radiant Black series without spoiling anything, but once again, I'm gonna try my best. Radiant Yellow appears to be an older gentleman, and as far as I know, we don't really know his name yet. What we do know is that each Radiant seems to have their own power set. At least that's what we're being led to believe by the story and the imagery used. It hasn't exactly all been laid out yet, which is honestly kind of what makes this series so much fun. There's so much we don't know. The mystery of it all. Radiant Yellow, however, seems to have powers based in perhaps light manipulation. To me, that's what it looks like the force blasts that they emit are based in, and it also looks to me like they can perhaps manipulate light to create illusions. That's just based on the imagery that's surrounding them in the comics. Like the other Radiants, Yellow isn't too experienced and doesn't seem to understand the full extent of their powers just yet. Radiant Yellow comes to us from the Radiant Black series, which belongs to Image Comics and is written by Kyle Higgins, who, yes, was also the initial writer of the Power Rangers series, and it was also created by artist Marcelo Costa. Number 2. EXO Mana War. Valiant Comics actually has a whole stable and universe filled with supers, including this one here, EXO Mana War. EXO Mana War is actually the name of the sentient armor that is tied to our hero in this series, Auric of Dacia, a Visigoth from the 5th century AD. Auric would end up being abducted by aliens and enslaved for years before he managed to escape. Auric learned of where his captive's armory was kept and basically ended up getting there and then getting the EXO Mana War suit. He then bonded with the suit and used that advanced tech to escape his captors. However, due to interstellar travel, by the time he arrived back on Earth, it was now the 20th century, basically modern day. Eric would have to adjust to this very different world, and along the way would meet other superheroes from the Valiant universe. That's right, there's not just 2 more, there's a whole bunch of them. EXO Mana War is a character created by writers Jim Shooter, Steve Englehart, and as well as artists Bob Layton and Barry Windsor-Smith. Number 1. Black Hammer. Black Hammer is Joe Weber, the title character of the Black Hammer series, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by the amazing Dean Ormston. The Black Hammer series was made to be completely different from other more traditional superhero comics, but if I did have to compare Black Hammer to anyone from that more conventional world, I would liken him to Thor myself. Joe Weber inherited the hammer and powers of the former Black Hammer when he died, being transported to the realm of New World as soon as he himself had picked up the fallen hammer. There he learned that he was meant to become the new Black Hammer, replacing the fallen one as Starlock's new and most powerful warrior in the fight against Starlock's evil twin, the Anti-God. While being the title character, Black Hammer isn't actually the main character of this series. As we learn near the end of issue number 1, Black Hammer sacrificed himself to save the world from the Anti-God and keep his fellow superheroes and friends alive. But what really happened to him, and just how and why are his teammates now seemingly trapped in the timeless and kinda eerie town of Rockwood? Well, to find out, you'll have to read on, true believers. But honestly, you should just go read Black Hammer because it's pretty great. Everyone go read all the Black Hammer things. It's like a whole universe now.
Starting us off in at number 10, Lobo the Duck. Lobo the Duck is strangely enough the combination of Lobo and Donald Duck. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's Howard the Duck, and was introduced in Lobo the Duck number 1 from 1997 and is present on Earth 9602, but in a timeline where the amalgam heroes have died. Lobo the Duck is a fearless and strangely muscular, especially for a duck, anti-hero bounty hunter who, along with his shape-shifting canine sidekick Impossible Dog, is investigating the murders of several amalgam comics heroes. Lobo only agrees to find the murderers of these heroes if he gets paid up front though, but soon begins the investigation. Lobo fights his way through Gold Kidney Lady, Dr. Bongface, and various other supervillains before he realizes that the end of the world is about to begin, and only he can stop it. He has all of Lobo's powers and abilities, including immortality, super strength, and a mastery of basically every weapon. He also has a genius level intellect, a superhuman sense of smell, can track anyone or anything across galaxies, and is a master of quack fu. Yeah, I just wanted an excuse to mention this guy, but honestly immortality makes him pretty damn powerful. And at 9, Pharaoh Man. Pharaoh Man is a combination of Colossus and Pharaoh Lad, and was introduced in X-Patrol number 1, which is clearly a combination of X-Men and Doom Patrol. Peter and his twin Alexei were all each other had, since even their mother couldn't bear to look at their faces. That's not even a face a mother could love. The twins shared everything from the moment they were born, but one day while saving Alexei's life from an oncoming truck, Peter changed into living metal, stopping it, revealing to himself that he was actually a metamutant, but Alexei was unfortunately not. Alexei's growing resentment drove him away from his brother until eventually he left Peter alone. After this, Peter was recruited by Niles Cable, a mysterious traveler from the future, to join the X-Patrol. In their first appearance in X-Patrol number 1, Pharaoh Man and his metamutant teammates became involved in the siege of Latkovia against Dr. Doomsday, a combination of Dr. Doom and Doomsday, which already sounds like Bad News Bears. He has all the powers of Colossus but can change into this form at will, like Pharaoh Lad. And at 8, Harold Stark. Harold Stark is a combination of Iron Man and Green Lantern, and was introduced in Iron Lantern number 1 in 1997. While making modifications to a stationary flight simulator, suddenly the simulator took off with Hal still inside. It seemed to be drawn to a crashed alien spaceship, but the simulator quickly lost power and crashed as well, but only yards from that spaceship. The crash left Hal in bad shape, with jagged metal piercing his chest, but nevertheless he made his way to that spaceship. That's resilience, where he found the corpse of an alien. In an effort to keep himself alive though, Hal used the alien technology in the ship to make a suit powered by the alien battery inside, which Hal noted looked remarkably like a lantern. Wearing this armor, Hal fought off the aliens who had shot down Romancer's ship, but was also seen by others, being called the Iron Lantern by the media. The suit of armor not only allowed him to survive, but gave him incredible powers, allowing him to create any object he pleased out of green energy, due to the battery he used being powered by the living planet. Iron Lantern has the technical and genius level intellect of Tony Stark, but has all the powers of Green Lantern, which is pretty damn cool. And at 7, Dina Prince. Dina Prince, also known as Dina of Themyscira, was first introduced in Bullets and Bracelets number 1 and is a combination of Wonder Woman and Elektra. While still young, Dina left Themyscira to explore man's world, leaving behind her family and her adopted sister Overlord. On her travels, she worked for the King of Wakanda, who gifted her adamantium bracelets. However, she later left to set up her own freelancing business in the US. There she met Trevor Castle and the two got married. At least, they were married until their infant son Ryan was mysteriously killed, and the emotional toll was too much. Both of them blamed themselves for not being able to save their son. They seemed to never plan on meeting again. However, Monarch brought the two together again and pitted them against Thanos, a combination of Thanos and Darkseid. Yeah, he had perceived the Lord of Apocalypse was responsible for the fate of their son, but she discovered that Ryan was not dead, merely displaced in time, and had grown up to become Kanto. Knowing that their son was still alive, Dina and Trevor seemed to restart their relationship. Dina has the divine empowerment from Wonder Woman, giving her superhuman strength and durability, as well as a mastery over archery and hand-to-hand combat. And at 6, Logan Wayne. Logan Wayne is a combination of, obviously, Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3, the same issue where this universe was created. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' murder at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and was ambushed and murdered by poachers a short time after his arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Forces. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X Project, the Canadian Super Soldier program. It was here that Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his metamutant nature. The Weapon X Project was terminated due to his failure, because Logan was ineffective as a weapon because he had a conscience. But this didn't stop him from being pretty damn badass. Having all the powers of Logan as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, this is in essence a superpowered Batman, which I think we all know is something to fear. Halfway through and at number 5, Robert Bruce Banner. Robert Bruce Banner is the combination of Bruce Banner and understandably Solomon Grundy, and was first introduced in Doctor Strange Fate number 1 as one of his aides. Bruce Banner was a scientist experimenting with radiation, when an experiment he was working on went horribly wrong. However, it fused him with the elemental entity known as Solomon Grundy. The fusion between Banner and Grundy became only known as the Skulk, and after a confrontation with Doctor Strange Fate, the Doc showed Skulk that he could keep him in his human form with use of magic. So in an effort to stay human, or at least be able to become human again, Skulk agreed to work as an agent for Doctor Strange Fate in return for the Doc keeping him in his human form, for most of the time. Skulk possesses all the powers and abilities of both Solomon Grundy and Hulk, and thanks to Doctor Strange Fate, Banner can shapeshift between his human form and his Skulk form at will, and since he possessed the same powers as Grundy, when he dies, he's reborn. But that's not even the craziest thing in this universe. And in 4, Blaze Allen. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon number 1, is, aside from what you might have called your ex to your girlfriends, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. Yes, there are actually multiple Speed Demons. The demon component, Etrigan, was also formerly Jay Garrick, before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. You know, Jay Garrick. Earth 2 Flash. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect souls from the most pure and most corrupt, which just seems weird to me, but okay, you do you. But Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him, at his wedding Night Spectre stole Iris's soul. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least ensure her safety. It didn't work. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe fire. Wally West, an amalgamation of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon, who accepted the power in order to help his uncle Blaze get Iris back. It's funny, because in a couple of days I'm going on vacation and I'm making it my mission to try to convince at least one person to sell me their soul. Like, it's not actually gonna work, but I think it's gonna be funny if I can do it. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, White Witch. First appearing in Doctor Strange Fate number 1 from 1996, White Witch is a combination of Scarlet Witch and Zatanna. White Witch's origin is not completely known, but when she was introduced, she was acting as one of Doctor Strange Fate's aides. Fearing that access would divide the Amalgam universe back into its original 2 universes, Doctor Strange Fate decides to capture and exterminate him, so he has Mix mystically teleport his 3 agents into his sanctum, known as Arkham Tower. Strange Fate proceeded to explain to the 3 that Access was a greater threat than any of their previous foes, including Mephisto Satanists or Baron Wotan. Access managed to escape Skulk and Jade Nova by teleporting, but White Witch approached him from behind, pushed him to the ground, climbed on top of him, and with a kiss, he was knocked out. Then White Witch said that you shouldn't send a girl or a monster to do a woman's job. White Witch has all the powers of both Scarlet Witch and Zatanna, making it obvious why Doctor Strange Fate would want her as his aide. That's insane. And it can only be topped by 2 people. Penultimately in at number 2, Clark Kent. Super Soldier is fairly evidently the combination of Clark Kent and Steve Rogers, first being introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3 from 1996. During World War II, government scientists were working on a super soldier formula that would transform a man into much more, into some sort of human weapon using cellular samples from an alien corpse. Clark Kent volunteers for the Super Soldier program and they administer the formula, as well as a good chunk of solar radiation. This mixture gave Kent incredible abilities, including all of those of Captain America and Superman. Super strength, heat vision, flight, you name it. Now known as Super Soldier, Kent wields the Superman logo as his shield. In March of 1942, Super Soldier fought Ultra Metallo, a robot sent by Lex Luthor to aid Germany in winning the war by killing Clark. But the fight started in Washington, DC and ended above the northern Atlantic Ocean, when Clark sacrificed himself to take down the robot, sinking them both into the icy depths. Jimmy Olsen was one of the few witnesses, and instead reported that Super Soldier had retired after America had declared that they won the war. 50 years later, the body was thawed out in JLA number 4, and Clark joined the Judgment League Avengers as its leader. Finally, in at number 1, Dr. Strange Fate. Dr. Strange Fate is one of the most powerful beings on Earth 9602, being a combination of not only Dr. Strange and Dr. Fate, but Charles Xavier as well. While traveling through the Himalayas, Metamutant Charles Xavier was rescued by Nabu the Ancient One, who at the time was Lord Supreme of Order, which is a pretty damn impressive sounding title to say the least. Taught the mysteries of the supernatural world by Nabu, Charles taps into the energies and forces of both telepathic and mystical, making the Metamutant Sorcerer one of the most powerful beings in the Amalgam universe. Since he was already a powerful telepath, Charles quickly surpasses his teacher and was promoted to the new Lord Supreme of Order. Dr. Strange Fate was also one of the founding members of the Judgment League Avengers, and began pursuing threats in shadowy realms, leaving the protection of Earth to, lesser beings. Starting us off in at number 10, Vlad Plasmus. In the world of Danny Phantom, there exists a select few individuals with the ability to transition between a human form and a ghost form. One of these is Danny Fenton, the other is a female clone of him named Danny Fenton, but the third is probably the most important one, Vlad Plasmus, also known as Vlad Masters, Amity Park's mayor, and Danny's dad's old college friend who's in love with his wife. Yeah, Vlad is secretly a human-ghost hybrid, actually the first to come into existence, following an accident that was caused by a college experiment that he was working on with Jack and Maddie, which are Danny's parents, in which Vlad gained his powers. Having been a half-ghost for the last 20 years, he serves as the main antagonist of the series, acting as just Danny's ultimate villain. But I mean, being a human-ghost hybrid and being the reason Danny Phantom goes dark in another timeline where his family's blown up is certainly worthy of getting him on this list. Plus, I love Danny Phantom. Butch, send me a pop figure, please. I couldn't find one.
Number 9. Haziral. Haziral is the demon who possesses the leader of the Rat Queens, Hannah. Hannah is an elven necromancer in the series whose very existence as well as the type of magic she practiced made her controversial while growing up. As such, she ends up making a pact with the demon Haziral to get access to magic so that she can pass her classes at Mage U. This prompts her to grow horns and also makes her indebted and permanently bonded to the demon. Using such dark magic has consequences, of course, and when she taps into it, it can cause Hannah to go kind of into a pretty crazy frenzy, losing control over herself as her darker side and the demon within her takes over. In Rat Queens, Hannah was prompted to use this power again to save her friends and fellow Rat Queens after years of resisting the temptation of said demonic power. Unfortunately, this also meant she would have to confront Haziral after years of staving off the demon's power and influence. In a way, Haziral is also like a symbol for Hannah's own inner demons, though he is himself literally a demon with his own wants and desires. Both a symbol and an actual demon. Mainly, he loves Hannah and he wants to continue to be as close to her at any cost. Which is obviously not very good for her, but Hannah also has a lot of shit that she needs to work out, so yeah.
And at 8, Dave. Dave's origin is unknown as of yet, but it is heavily inferred that he was like the other thousands of robots in this series, created by humans to serve a certain task. However, the robots became advanced enough to form their own conscious thoughts, so of course they revolted and killed off the entire human race. It was shown that Dave was one of the robots that served in combat and also helped fight off numerous alien races, and after the wars, robots seemed to act entirely like humans, adopting their culture and their way of life. Dave had a wife named Sally, who he actually later divorced because apparently even robot girlfriends are unbearable, and a son called Scotty. However, he is now a nobody working as an office drone, which only makes him more of a villain, despite being the protagonist of the story, because given that he wiped out the entire human race, I think it's safe to say that he's a villain.
Number 7. Scorpina. Scorpina was known for being one of Rita Repulsa's most capable enforcers in the television show Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the same can be said for her comic book counterpart. In fact, I'd even say that Scorpina is a bit more ruthless in the comics, in my opinion. She ends up becoming a somewhat reluctant and sassy ally later on, but starts out as a strong and menacing villain to the Power Rangers. Scorpina is known for her determination, expert fighting skills, and her intelligence. She initially is presented as a major enemy for Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, as he struggles to fight against Rita Repulsa's influence and hold over him. Scorpina would also go on to work alongside Lord Draken, the evil alternate future version of Tommy, and would later succeed him as the leader of his army.
And at 6, Death. We all love a good rendition of death, right? Of course we do, that's like the foundation of any good comic storyline. Well, in East of West, the whole story is about death, with this version of the Horseman being the protagonist of the series. And not only is he the Horseman of Death, but they're actually a horseman as well, considering how East of West is Wild West themed. However, this time around, Death, formerly of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, fell in love with someone named Xyloan, something like that. I probably butchered it, but oh well. And then had a son with her, which is a whole other can of worms. Presumably killed by Bel Solomon of the Chosen though. He survived with the help of Wolf and Crow. Since then, the White Horseman embarked on a quest for revenge over his wife and son. And in the most recent incarnation, Death possessed skin that was jet black instead of the pure white skin that he has now. He was also the only horseman who didn't get a gender change in the new reincarnation. Alright, I mean it's Death, so Death is genderless. But I mean, he may be good in the story though, but I think it's safe to say that Death before this series was a pretty, well, like, death-loving guy. Self-love.
Number 5, Violator. Violator was always an indie villain that haunted my nightmares as a kid. Violator is the clown character with blue face paint from the Spawn film, who was played by John Leguizamo. I love John Leguizamo, but this role, wow. Also, John Leguizamo and everything is kind of wow, it's great. Not only did he crush it, but it also felt like he kind of crushed me and my soul under the terror of the Violator. The Violator in the comics is a Spawn villain who is one of the most powerful demons of hell. He often focuses on getting Spawn to use his necro powers, trying to get him sent back to hell to become Malebolgia's servant faster, but also serves to prepare Hellspawn for joining the army of Satan. Of course, that doesn't mean that he enjoys his job, and he often seeks to try and undermine his master. Violator is basically immortal as well. Despite dying many times, he's often reanimated shortly after in hell, only to return to torment Spawn some more. Yay.
In at 4, Nemesis. At the start of this series, the supervillain Nemesis destroys a building in Tokyo, killing a SWAT team and a police inspector. In Washington, D.C., the FBI informs Metro Police Chief Inspector Blake Morrow that Nemesis is targeting him next. Haha. Wonderful. He's given a card reading Black Morrow, March 12th at midnight, flatline still counts. Morrow has his family put in protective custody, and then Nemesis hijacks Air Force One over the District of Columbia, taking the United States president hostage and crashing the plane. Nemesis makes an international broadcast, revealing the president as a hostage in front of him, and then finishing it off by saying, "It's time you hail your new chief." Nemesis reveals to his henchman that his real name is Matt Anderson, and his father had committed suicide after Morrow tried to imprison him for hunting runaway teenagers with his rich friends. Bored of well behavior and less excitement, Anderson traveled around the world to learn the ways of crime, hoping to fulfill his mother's dying wish to have Morrow killed. So I think you can understand that this guy is pretty messed up and a powerful villain.
Number 3, Dracula. I think Dracula is a really important villain of Vampirella's to talk about since he also just surprisingly married her. In Priest's Vampirella series, he had these two longtime enemies tie the knot recently, shaking things up completely. I know when I heard about this going down, I was like, what? Actually, a lot of Priest's run has been shaking up the status quo and the world of Vampirella in interesting, exciting, and of course, bloody ways. Of course, the version of Dracula we see in this series isn't the conventional one that you're used to seeing when it comes to Vampirella's comics. This version of Dracula is a reincarnation that is attempting to cheat fate by marrying Vampy, thereby altering his destiny and hopefully saving his life. For years in the comics though, Vampirella's nemesis Drac was often posed as the lord of a bunch of evil vampires, with all the vampires kind of coming from his blood lineage being corrupt in some way. It was like he only made bad vampires. That was like a whole thing. Dracula has also been shown in the past to be an exiled vampire from the planet Draculon, Vampirella's home world. Of course, Dynamite isn't the only publisher to feature Dracula. While we might be focusing on the Vampy version and his long history there, Dracula has also appeared throughout multiple different series spanning across various different publishers. And if you're like, man, but I already knew about Dracula, I don't know if you knew about his connection to Vampirella, but now you do! Yay!
Penultimately, in at number 2, Overlord. A superpowered crime lord who operates out of Chicago, he is the archenemy of the Savage Dragon and the leader of Vicious Circle. There have been 3 people who had this mantle though: Antonio Seghetti, who I keep trying to call Antonio Spaghetti, Victor Nixon, and Flash Mercury. Antonio Seghetti grew up in Chicago around the time of Al Capone and became fascinated with the mafia way of life. When his sister was being assaulted In an alleyway, the 8-year-old Saghetti stabbed the man responsible and claimed his first victim. This act led to a life of crime, and he soon came under the wing of a man who would become Octopus, whilst also rising up through the ranks of the Mafia. Once he had reached a position of authority in the Mafia, Saghetti vowed that he would never lose his power, but his position came under threat when a superpowered freak became the dominant figures in Chicago's crime sector. Seeking resources and methods with which to cement his leadership position in Chicago, Saghetti forced alliances with the Nation of Lieberheim and cyber data organizations, and as well became Overlord, because that's what you do.
Number 1, Lady Death. Because, you know, one comic book version of Death wasn't enough, so we had to do another one. Lady Death is one of the most powerful female supervillains out there, as she is literally the embodiment of death. And if you think you know about this Lady Death, you might not, because we're not talking about the one from Marvel. She hails from the Bad Girl comic days, where it was trendy for female characters to be bad, whether that be bad as anti-heroes, full-on heroes, or villains. In Lady Death's case, she was mainly known as a villain. She first debuted with Chaos Comics, but has changed publishers since her initial appearance with them. Lady Death originally was the beautiful and sexy woman who seduced Ernest Fairchild into becoming a full-on psychotic killer, who would later become known as Evil Ernie. As such, her first appearance was in Evil Ernie issue number 1 in the original black and white 1991 series. The Evil Ernie War of the Dead series finishes with Ernie managing to kill everyone on Earth in order to win Lady Death's favor. He does so by instigating an all-out nuclear war, ending the story with a mushroom cloud, and then ending the story again with a mushroom cloud of his face.
In at 10, Tony Stark. Wilson Fisk's men attempted to kill Anthony Stark in order to silence his drunken singing, forcing Sheriff Rogers to intervene and save his life. Tony Stark later donned the suit of battle armor to save the life of Red Wolf. However, this suit looks more like a train than a battle mech suit, and in all honesty, it's the perfect combination of these two things. First appearing in 1872 number 1 from 2015, this version of the Iron Man armor is one that I want to see someone cosplay, because holy damn, this look is based off the original Iron Man suit, and like, you know, the one Tony Stark built in a cave with a pile of scraps. Yeah, it's that one, but make it dark steampunk basically. But by steampunk I also mean steam engine. Well, combustion engine. I don't know much about trains. You know the train that Marty and Doc used to get the DeLorean up to 85 and then back to 1985 and Back to the Future Part 3? Yeah, that, but an Iron Man suit. I feel like the Tony from 1972 was the one who made that train fly and time travel. I feel like he was the one that Doc went to. In at 9, Gazer Beam. Simon J. Palladino, also known as Gazer Beam, is a minor character in The Incredibles. He only briefly appears in the film alive, but his disappearance and death really is what sets the events of the movie into motion. Gazer Beam was a member of the superhero team known as the Phantasmics, but conflicts with Everseer led him to leave the team, and he soon joined with the Thrilling Three as their new leader upon the death of Dynaguy, which he also later left. He appeared alive at the wedding of Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible, but during the superhero ban, Gazer Beam was an activist for superhuman rights, wanting the ban on supers to be revoked. 15 years later, he would be one of the most recent victims of the Omnidroid, with Bob having noticed his disappearance becoming a story in the newspaper. His final act before dying though was to use his powers to carve Kronos on the cave wall in which he was hiding, in the hopes that someone would discover it and put an end to Syndrome's evil schemes. An act that was really what made the Incredibles able to stop Syndrome's scheme and save the day, since without it Bob wouldn't really have learned what the mission was. And yes, I used a character from the Incredibles on this list because he was a superhero in the past. Deal with it. And at 8, Stardust the Super Wizard. However, this is a case of a superhero forgotten in the past, so another use for the term from the past. Stardust the Super Wizard is a fictional superhero from the golden age of comics who originally appeared in American comic books published by Fox Feature Syndicate, and first appeared in Fantastic Comics number 1 in 1939. Stardust the Super Wizard was featured in 16 issues of Fantastic Comics, and this was before superheroes were really trying to be better than criminals, as Stardust would basically kill all of his enemies in various ways with his wide array of powers. And when I say wide array of powers, I mean it. This guy has about as many powers as a Lantern Corps, if not more. Superhuman strength, speed, durability, and endurance, vast knowledge of interplanetary science, master of space and planetary forces, skilled detective, formidable brawler, accelerated perception, extrasensory perception, augmented respiration, interplanetary flight, indestructibility, telepathy, transportation, metamorphosis, transmogrification, telekinesis, selective omniscience, which is awesome, and luminous skywriting. and then throw on whatever other powers he needs to have thanks to the story, because he's a freaking wizard and it's 1939. This, with the combination of just offing people he didn't like, makes him absolutely nuts. But I love it. And at 7, Dark Knights of Steel. Coming in November of this year, Dark Knights of Steel will basically be DC meets Game of Thrones. The series is written by Tom Taylor and takes place in a medieval fantasy world, where a spaceship crash lands from a doomed planet. So not only will the Dark Knight be here, but so will Superman and Wonder Woman, along with Harley Quinn, Black Lightning, and more. Tom Taylor told Entertainment Weekly, quote, "I've spent the last 2 years creating a new epic fantasy universe for DC Comics, and Dark Knights of Steel is an absolute dream come true. Despite being the writer of the DC horror series Deceased, I am actually a huge fantasy fan, combining two of my favorite things, DC superheroes and high fantasy. It's my absolute happy place, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. I love medieval stuff. It's why I love Skyrim and Game of Thrones, and why my name is the Cheese King. I love fantasy stories, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into this one, especially when in the preview we got for this series, we can see what is in essence a character sheet base, or like character stats for Superman. So if they include one of these with every issue, you can have a real DC based fantasy Dungeons and Dragons game with like official stats. And that sounds f***ing awesome. Who do you hope shows up in this series? I'm hoping to see the Flash, but like medieval, but like, hey, you let me know your thoughts down below. And at 6, Ogen Bat. Ogen Bat is a Japanese superhero created by Suzuki Ichiro and Takeo Nagamatsu in 1931, who originally debuted in a kamishibai, which is a paper theater. Ogen Bat is considered by some to be the world's first superhero, and is a precursor to later superhero characters such as the Japanese Prince of Gamma, as well as well-known comic book characters like Superman and Batman. Ogen Bat was created by 16-year-old Takeo Nagamatsu and 25-year-old Suzuki Ichiro in 1931. And the two were inspired by drawings of mythological characters in Tokyo's Unio Royale Museum to create a new hero based on science rather than mythology. Ogen Bat is a being from ancient Atlantis who was sent forward in time 10,000 years to battle evil forces threatening the present day. He has a golden skull-shaped head, wears a green and white swashbuckler outfit with a high-collared red cape, and carries a rapier. His superpowers include superhuman strength, invulnerability, and the ability to fly. Plus, I mean, he was sent 10,000 years in the future, so if that's not the past, then I don't know what is. Halfway through into number 5, Danny Phantom. Young Danny Fenton, he was just 14 when his parents built a very strange machine. It was designed to view a world unseen, that realm being the ghost dimension, aptly named the Ghost Zone. When it didn't quite work, his folks, they just quit. Then Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash and everything just changed. His molecules got all rearranged. And then this 14-year-old kid gained the ability to transform into a human or into a ghost. Danny Phantom is one of my all-time favorite cartoons, and it helped to shape me into who I am today. So of course I'm going to include it as a superhero from the past, because he's from my past, okay? That's right, I found a way to work it in. While in his ghost form, Danny has multiple abilities, including flight, invisibility, intangibility, and to possess people at first. However, as the series goes on, he gains more abilities, such as ghost rays, which are bolts of energies from his hands, cryokinesis, and his ghostly wail, which he learns sooner than he's supposed to, thanks to a version of himself from the future, who he ends up fighting in the 2-part, hour-long episode titled Ultimate Enemy, in which present Danny gets dragged to the future, where he's turned evil, thanks to combining with his primary adversary and uncle, Vlad Plasmus. So he also got dragged into the future, thus meaning that he was from the past. Boom! You looking for this? In at 4, Phantom Rider. Carter Slade was born and raised in Ohio in the mid-19th century, along with his brother Lincoln. Eventually, Carter decided to move out west to the new territories in order to become a school teacher at a new settlement in Montana. However, he came across a group of people slaughtering helpless homesteaders. Though he fought bravely, Carter was eventually defeated, shot multiple times, and slowly dying from his injuries. He was brought to a native medicine man called Flaming Star, who had many years before seen a shooting star that brought with it a special dust. Flaming Star took this as a sign that a champion would one day be sent to them to fight injustice. He believed that Carter was this champion and gave him most of his costume, along with the dust, which Carter used to make the rest of it and tame a white horse he called Banshee. However, Carter would eventually die while trying to save his brother Lincoln from a cave-in, which results in Lincoln taking over the mantle of Phantom Rider. Basically, it's Ghost Rider from the Old West. And I think it's without the demon. Getting close to the end in number 3, Captain America. After being a kid from Brooklyn who just wanted to help, Steve Rogers volunteered for an experimental procedure to make super soldiers to aid the Americas during World War II. However, after the experiment was successful, the rest of the equipment was destroyed along with the genius behind it. However, after falling from an experimental drone plane into the North Atlantic Ocean, he spent decades frozen in a block of ice in a state of suspended animation, quite literally being a superhero from the past, even in real world standards, since this was also his reintroduction into the Marvel Comics Silver and Bronze Age. I think we all know this story at this point thanks to the absolute success of the MCU, but it's still easy to forget that Cap was originally from the 40s until comic books were on the rise again in the 60s, which is really interesting because, like, in the most literal sense of the word, Captain America is a hero from the past, and is probably the most fitting character for this list for that reason, but there are a couple more that I wanted to talk about, so I put him at number 3. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Knight. Marvel Comics' first Black Knight, Sir Percy of Scandia, first appeared in the medieval adventure series Black Knight numbers 1 to 5 from Atlantic Comics, the 1950s precursor to Marvel Comics, and this ran in 1955. The original Black Knight is Sir Percy of Scandia, a 6th century knight who serves at the court of King Arthur as his greatest warrior and one of the Knights of the Round Table. While the modern Black Knight seems to be making an appearance in the Eternals, the original Black Knight was recruited by the wizard Merlin and adopts a double identity. He pretends to be totally incompetent until changing into the persona of the Black Knight. As the Black Knight, Percy wields the Ebony Blade, which Merlin forged himself from a meteorite. The modern version, known as Dan Whitman, is the original Black Knight's descendant and the supervillain Black Knight's nephew. He inherited the mystical Ebony Blade that carried a curse and took the Black Knight mantle to help restore honor to it. And I gotta say, it's a really weird family dynamic that you got going on. This family reunions must be really awkward. Finally, in at number 1, Paul Manning. In the year 5700, we see a hero known as Paul Manning, who would appear whenever the world was in danger. However, it was revealed that this Paul Manning was in fact the Green Lantern known as Hal Jordan, who would be brought to the year 5700 by the Solarians. They would also wipe his mind and clear his memories to implant him with new ones, which is where Paul Manning came from. It was a created identity by the Solarians to get Hal to save them whenever they were having issues, or maybe if a really important cat was stuck in a tree. Eventually though, after being brought to the future many times, Hal ended up subconsciously creating an evil doppelganger of himself who took over the Paul Manning identity, and went on to terrorize the Solarians. He would then be defeated by actual Hal and would be converted into a functioning member of society. However, this was also all pre-Crisis, and after the collapse of the multiverse this no longer applies to the main continuity version of Manning. But it's still pretty interesting nonetheless. Like, imagine being pulled into the future and not even knowing it. By that logic, any of us could be from any point in the past, and we just wouldn't know.
Number 10, Rogers. This alternate version of Captain America resided in Earth 311, the 1602 reality, but initially came from the dystopian future reality of Earth 460, where Purple Man, aka Kilgrave, had become president for life. As such, Purple Man had seen Captain America as one of the last remaining threats to his dictatorship, and rather than make a martyr out of him through execution, he sent him back into the past, displacing the hero. Captain America took a new identity in the reality of Earth 311, adopting the name Rogers, and used his opportunity to warn the First Nations peoples of the Americas of the risk posed to their existence by the settlers who would come. As Rogers, during his time on Earth 311, Captain America helped maintain peace between the indigenous peoples of the land and the Roanoke colony settlers. In this reality, Roanoke also never disappeared due to the fact that they had Rogers there to help them survive the harsh environment of their new home. Number 9, Iron Man. The bullet points version of Steve Rogers never became a super soldier. Instead, he joins Project Iron Man during World War II, becoming the first Iron Man in history. In order to become this new mechanical hero, he has to become surgically grafted to the suit. He would then fight during World War II and later retire but be called back into action to take on the Hulk, who in this reality was Peter Parker. As in most realities, Steve, even as Iron Man, is really no match for that hulking behemoth and ends up dying in battle against him. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Age of X. This version of Captain America was kind of a villain, although it wasn't entirely his fault. He was led to believe that in order to protect the world, he and his team of Avengers would have to take out and defeat all of the mutants, which included Cap hunting down not just all kinds of mutants, but all ages of mutants as well, if you pick up what I'm putting down. This Captain America mowed down around tons of mutant kind with a gun, including Mystique, who was guarding mutant children. Fortunately, Mystique with her dying breath causes Captain America to question his mission and doubt that his objective is truly noble. He decides to go against orders and instead fight alongside the mutants working to protect them. Cap dies a hero, taking on the Hulk, who decides to stick with the mission, calling Steve a traitor. Once again, another reality where it's Cap versus Hulk and Hulk just destroys Cap. Number 7. Union Soldier Steven Rogers. What if Captain America fought in the American Civil War? Well, you can bet this is the version of the hero that we would get. Steven Rogers vs. 717 is the character who first appeared in the What If Captain America issue number 1 out of 2005. Here we explore just that version of Steve, who served in the American Civil War as a Union soldier. In the end, he turns against his villainous Colonel Bucky Barnes, who in this reality becomes the supervillain White Skull. In so doing, Steven becomes injured and is taken in and saved by the Eagle Chief, Wee Piak. Not only does the Eagle Chief save his life, but he also grants him extra strength, transforming him into the hero Captain America, who is armed with a mystical shield, peak human physique, and reflexes, and is rumored to be protected against all harm. This version of Captain America fights hard throughout the years to make sure the United States is a place of opportunity for all who call it their home. He truly represents the Captain America ideal of equality. Number 6. Ultimate Captain America. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Captain America is considered to be even more powerful than his 616 counterpart. The super soldier serum here didn't just prolong his life and leave him in peak human condition across the board, increasing his strength, speed, and durability, but it also gave him an accelerated healing factor and put him at a superhuman level when it came to his strength and his speed. It was once claimed that Steve Rogers of this reality could bench press a car. Across the board, this version could be considered stronger than the 616 version, although I would argue that 616 Captain America does have better leadership skills than our 1610 version. But that's just me. Number 5. Danielle Cage. Danielle Cage is the future daughter of Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. This could be who the future little 616 Danielle Cage ends up as, or maybe not. Only time will tell if Danielle ends up having a similar future to this alternate version of herself and Captain America, or not. In this reality of Earth 15061, Danielle Cage grows up to become the hero Captain America, possessing the abilities of both her father and her mother, meaning she is both super strong and super durable and can fly, all that good stuff you've come to know and love from both Luke and Jessica's heroic power sets. As Captain America in the future, she also has inherited and wields the Captain America shield. Number 4. MCU Captain America. I mean, of course MCU Captain America has to make our cut. The Marvel Cinematic version of the character is not only extremely popular, but is also deemed worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer, giving us that awesome fight scene in Avengers Endgame where Thor and Captain America are switching back and forth, alternating between sharing and wielding Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. This ultimately gives Cap a big power boost, being able to wield Thor's weapons, especially considering that Thor is one of the most powerful members of the Avengers team, in part because of his powerful, magical, and also kinda cosmic weapons. Number 3. Carol Danvers. That's right, Carol at one point managed to become Captain America. This has actually happened in more than one reality, but for this list we're going to focus on the version of Carol Cap that comes from the Venomverse. She appears as Captain America in Venomverse War Stories and hails from the same reality as Venom Rocket, Earth 18197. In the story she appears in, Captain America Carol Danvers and Venom Rocket battle it out as Rocket is looking to cash in on a bounty for the Kree who want Carol Danvers. Venom Rocket and Captain America seem pretty evenly matched here, but in the end, Rocket does not manage to capture Carol, and Carol seemingly ends up the victor of that match, though undoubtedly left with a pretty big mess to clean up as a result of their destructive battle. Carol Danvers as Captain America still seemingly possesses some version of her Kree physiology and her 616 power set here, making her a pretty powerful alternate version of Captain America. Number 2. Super Soldier. Super Soldier hails from the Amalgam Universe. Stories and characters created using the combined lore of DC Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains and Marvel Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains. Super Soldier himself is an alternate version created by combining the heroes Captain America from Marvel and Superman from DC. Clark Kent ended up in the Super Soldier program during World War II, which used alien DNA taken from a corpse that was discovered to alter Clark Kent permanently. ability, granting him superhuman powers. He has the combined power set of both Cap and Supes, making him pretty crazy powerful, although he also comes with his own highly dangerous villain as well, the Green Skull, and his own weakness to the ore known as Green K. So keep in mind, he does have that weakness. Number 1. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is what you get when you combine the mystical powerhouse of Doctor Strange with the all-American war hero Captain America. The result is a character who happens to be tough, strong, fast, and a gifted fighter, while also possessing tons of mystical knowledge and abilities. Soldier Supreme hails from Warp World, the reality created by Gamora when she folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones. Here, Steve Rogers participated in the Super Soldier program, which was really a front for something less scientific and more magical in nature. Conducting a series of rituals, Dr. Morgan Erskine transformed Steven Rogers into the Soldier Supreme.
In a tent bearing blood, Lord John Falsworth was the youngest of 2 sons of Lord William Falsworth, one of the wealthiest members of the British aristocracy in late Victorian and Edwardian times. John left embittered when his older brother Montgomery inherited the title and the bulk of his estate upon William's death, shortly before World War I. Eventually, Falsworth sought the castle Dracula in Romania in order to find and control the Dracula as a means of achieving immense wealth and power. However, Falsworth fell victim to Dracula's hypnotic powers because, you know, he's a vampire, and was turned into a vampire himself. Dracula bid Falsworth to return to England to wreak havoc upon the country that had repulsed him earlier. Although Falsworth's activities remained largely unrevealed during this time, at some point he again offered his services to the emerging fascist regime in Germany. That's right, folks. We gotta... can't really say it. German scientists performed painful experiments which enabled him to avoid his vulnerability to direct sunlight, and during World War II, German intelligence once again sent Falsworth to England to continue a new reign of terror. Wonderful. In a 9, Batman. Bruce Wayne died when the vigilante Batman was turned into a vampire. With now only one side of his dual life to take care of, the vampire haunts the nights, frightening and biting criminals. With most of the vampires being destroyed, Batman confronted Dracula and killed him by impaling the ancient vampire on a tree that was destroyed by lightning. However, the victory came at a cost, because during the fight Dracula successfully drained the last of Batman's blood, destroying his humanity. Nonetheless, Batman retained his sense of self and assured Alfred that only Bruce Wayne had died, the Batman will live on. And thanks to his new vampiric powers, he would be able to protect Gotham City forever. Because, you know, immortality. Not only that though, but then Batman went on to turn the other Justice League members into vampires. Batman lost his supernatural companion of a vampirized Catwoman when she took a fatal crossbow bolt that was aimed at him. Overcome with rage over the death of the only person able to control his bloodlust, Batman killed the Joker and drained all his blood, which only led to more draining. In at 8, Zaris. Zaris is the son of Dracula. Angry with humanity encroaching into vampire territory and unhappy with his founder's leadership, Zaris created a secret alliance with the leaders of various vampire sects. The Claus sect, which was warriors, the Charnaputra sect, Mysticos sect, Nosferatu sect, Atlantean sect, the Moshka sect, and the Siren sect, all to overthrow his father. He accomplished this at the Centennial Meeting of the Vampires. Yeah, they have a meeting every 100 years. He and his allies drove stakes into Dracula and cut his head off, and his allies, like Mysticos, invented devices which cancelled the frequencies of light that were harmful to vampires. So Zaris decided to use these devices to create a new, more dominant place in the world for vampires. He gave these devices to his allies so they could stage a raid on Krieger sect's fortress, eliminating their senior leadership. A vampire with devices that cancel out what the vampire's weaknesses are? No thanks. In at number 7, Harkon Volkihar. Lord Volkihar is actually the main antagonist of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim's DLC Dawnguard's main storyline. This vampire lord is not only a vampire, but he can also shapeshift into a vampire lord form that gives him a boost to all of his abilities and magics. Lord Volkihar once read a prophecy about a bow that could blot out the sun permanently, causing Skyrim to be a land free for vampires to roam. But to complete this prophecy, he needs Auriel's bow, which is technically also known as as Akatosh's bow, since Oriel is just the elven name for Akatosh. And a daughter of Cold Harbor, which was a pure-blooded vampire made by the Daedric Lord Molag Bal after a, let's call it a ritual. This nearly came to fruition when you brought him both the bow and his own daughter before your final battle. So if you didn't end up winning, you'd be handing this vampiric lord everything he needs to take over Skyrim. So yeah, it's pretty messed up. And that's even if you don't become a vampire lord in the storyline, which you also can do. However, you end up still having to kill Harkin anyway, since he doesn't really need you anymore, etc. So yeah, pretty powerful dude, unless you have like a 100 archery skill. And at 6, The Flash. Barry Allen, aka The Flash, is one of the former heroes who turned into a bloodthirsty vampire after Batman spread the vampiric plague throughout the world of Earth 43. He confronts Wally West from a different world and attempts to kill him. However, before he can succeed, he was killed by Roy Harper from his world, who shot him with wooden arrows in the back. Because, you know, it's like wooden stakes. But even if he went down easily, that does not mean he wasn't powerful, since, you know, a vampire with the powers of the Flash, and not just any Flash, but Barry Allen, the literal Speed Force himself, basically. Yeah, I don't think you really need to see why that's absolutely terrifying. If he hadn't have been killed by Roy, he would have wiped out humanity, and I think that's the reason why he had to be killed, so that didn't happen, because there is literally no way to defend against that, especially since Batman, the one who always has a plan to stop Justice League members, was the one who turned him, so there's no one really to fight him now. Halfway through into number 5, Morbius. First being introduced in Amazing Spider-Man number 101 in 1971, Dr. Michael Morbius was a scientist born in Greece who became a Nobel Prize winning biochemist. He suffered from a blood disease and developed an experimental treatment in an effort to cure it. Its side effects though turned him into a vampire adjacent who needs to consume blood in order to survive, and gain typical vampire characteristics such as an aversion to sunlight and the powers of flight, enhanced strength, speed, and a healing factor. His overall appearance changed as well. He gained fangs, his nose flattened to appear more bat-like, and his skin became extremely pale, like me. But he has less of a nose and sharper teeth. Additionally, the victims of his bite would turn into living vampires themselves, which is absolutely nuts. This character also made an appearance in the 90s Spider-Man animated series, which is literally my favorite thing in the world. However, since it was a kid's show, he couldn't consume blood, so instead he consumed plasma. And his origin was changed as well, so it could kind of be intertwined with Peter's, when he spliced his DNA with Peter Parker's using the neurogenic recombinator, and then a bat jumped in front of the ray. And in 4, Dracula. In Marvel Comics, Count Dracula is a centuries-old vampire, sorcerer, and Transylvanian nobleman who rules from his namesake fortress known as Castle Dracula. He is the supreme ruler and world's most powerful vampire. Originally the Wallachian ruler Vlad the Impaler, he turned himself into a vampire following a battle with the invading Ottoman Empire, seeking revenge to, you know, destroy his enemies, because of course. Driven by a lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and in the modern age, superheroes. Dracula has a vast network of loyal servants, cultists, brides, and minions who regularly assist him and attempt to resurrect him if he actually ends up dying. Recently, Dracula and his followers have taken up refuge in Chernobyl, creating a new vampire nation and bringing him into conflict with the Avengers. But given that like he's in essence the original vampire, I feel like he deserves to be on this list. Also, in the Marvel universe, his name is Vlad, which just makes me think of Vlad Plasmus from Danny Phantom, and I love Danny Phantom, so. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultraman. Ultraman was turned into a vampire by Batman, which doesn't really make sense because he's a Kryptonian, so like without kryptonite fangs, how did Batman pierce his skin? But you know, whatever. Ultraman, along with many Supermen of the multiverse, were kidnapped by the Prophecy to steal their powers, but they were freed by the Justice Incarnate. Later on, Ultraman confronted Wally West from a different world along with the Flash and attempted to kill him, but Wally managed to knock him down with his super speed fist and hold him down with dozens of wooden stakes. And while he seemingly was defeated by those wooden stakes, I don't think you need an explanation as to why a Superman with vampire powers is a bad idea. Okay, that's horrifying. Although this does beg the question, does it cancel out like the whole sun powers thing, since like vampires are weak to sunlight but Superman uses the yellow sun to get his powers? Or is it just like that a Kryptonian vampire is double weak to a red sun? Because he's already double weak to a red sun, but does that mean that like he doesn't really have powers? I don't know. It's an interesting debate that I believe you should have in the comments, but respectfully. Can't believe I'm saying that, because no one's gonna listen. Who am I kidding? Penultimately, in number 2, the Alpha Vampire. In the world of Supernatural, the Alpha Vampire was the very first vampire and basically father of all other vampires. He was one of the alpha monsters captured and interrogated by Crowley and Castiel in their efforts to locate Purgatory. He escaped Crowley's prison though and set up a new nest in North Dakota, and then Montana. He was later tracked down for his blood for the weapon to defeat the Leviathans, and ultimately recognizing a common enemy, he actually gave the Winchesters his blood without a fight. During an attack on the British Men of Letters though, the Alpha Vampire was killed by Sam Winchester with the cult, like the demon cult that can for some reason kill literally everything. I don't know how, but whatever. The Alpha Vampire is first glimpsed briefly flashing in the minds of his children as it's commanding them to recruit more of his army in like season 6. Nothing is known about this particular monster aside from the fact that its messages can be heard by all other vampires, and he can also just knock him out if he wants to. Dean ends up seeing this vision while he is infected, but yeah, the daddy of all other vamps? That's a powerful boy. Finally, in at number 1, Varney. Varney was a human or Gigantopithecus sorcerer that once lived in like 10,000 BC. Varney served in the cult of the Darkholders under Thusla Doom. Injured due to the actions of King Kull of Volscia, a dying Varney was transformed into a vampire by sorcerers of the pre-cataclysmic Atlantis, because he was born in Atlantis. He allegedly was the last survivor among the vampires created in Atlantis before the Great Cataclysm, and ruled over Earth's vampires. But in 1459, tired of his ages-long existence, Varney chose Dracula as his successor and Lord of Earth's vampires, and imparted much of his supernatural power to him by forcing Dracula to drink his blood. Varney then committed suicide by exposing himself to direct sunlight. However, years later, Marie Laveau, desperate for vampire blood, had kidnapped Doctor Strange's friend Morgana Blessing and his brother Victor. Strange was about to deliver the spell page to Laveau when reason reasserted itself and he forever banished the page from Earth, basically. Laveau, possessing the Darkhold though, invoked a spell contained within for resurrecting the Lord of the Vampires. So yeah, the very first vampire of all time in the Marvel Universe, who killed himself with sunlight and then was resurrected, and also made Dracula. Yeah, that's a number 1 for sure. There's no contest, even from the Alpha Vamp. No way. And at 10, Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain is the 4th Batgirl. Born with the assassin David Cain and Lady Shiva as her parents, she was trained to become the perfect warrior. Her father deprived her of speech so that she would learn movement and physicality as her first language. Batman adopted her into the Batman family during No Man's Land to replace Helena Bertinelli as Batgirl. Cassandra would eventually turn her Batgirl costume over to Stephanie Brown and become a member of Batman Incorporated as Black Bat. Trained by her father to be the ultimate weapon, Cassandra was not taught to speak. Instead, her father relied mostly on actions to communicate with her. He also cut her off from the outside world, only exposing her to anything or anyone other than him when absolutely necessary. As a result, the parts of her brain normally used for speech and language processing were trained so that she could read other people's movements and body language to recognize their thoughts without verbal communication, and predict with uncanny accuracy their next move in a fight. This also caused her brain to develop learning functions different from most, so it's like a form of dyslexia that hampers her ability to talk, read, and write. And at 9, Beast Boy. Beast Boy's parents, Mark and Mary Logan, were geneticists that would travel the jungles of the world to study their wildlife. Beast Boy was brought up in the jungles of Brazil, Africa, India, and several other places. The Logans became particularly interested in a rare species of green monkey, which honestly I understand. But the day they finally found them, something terrible happened. Beast Boy was bitten by one of these monkeys and contracted a serious illness called Secudia. To save him, his parents attempted to cure him with a new serum, which bestowed him with his iconic shape-changing abilities, and as a side effect, his skin, hair, and eyes all turned green. Beast Boy was originally the youngest member of Doom Patrol, however revealed in Homecoming, Mentos' harsh discipline and less than encouraging attitude finally alienated him from his surrogate family, and he stuck out on his own. Looking for a new place to live, he came to Jump City where he encountered Robin, Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg. Afterwards, the 5 formed a new team of their own, the Teen Titans. And at 8, Aqualad. Operating as Aqualad by his king's side as the first leader of the Teen Titans, he briefly worked under deep cover as the loyal lieutenant of his father, Black Manta, to bring down the Light and their partner. Eventually, King Orin retired his heroic duties and Calder took over the mantle of Aquaman, joined the Justice League, and became their leader by July of 2018. In February 2019, he officially stepped down as their leader, and Aqualad eagerly expected to become a member of the Justice League alongside Speedy, Robin, and Kid Flash. However, when it became clear that it wasn't happening, he decided to accompany Robin and Kid Flash to investigate Cadmus Labs. There they found the Genomorph Project and Superboy, whom they liberated. Aqualad, Kid Flash, and Robin set off on an unsanctioned mission to protect CEO Selena Gonzalez from the League of Shadows, but despite their best efforts, Gonzalez still vanished. And at 7, Miss Martian. When she first came to Earth, Miss Martian was a bubbly, exceptionally sweet, polite, and caring individual, although occasionally shy young Martian girl who longed to fit in on Earth and become a member of a team. However, being from Mars and having never really interacted with humans before, she was frequently unfamiliar with Earth's customs. She felt especially uncomfortable with her telepathy, as on Mars it's the prime form of communication, but on Earth it's not really a thing. But she was also quite inexperienced, but eager to please. By 2016, she had become considerably more serious, but still retained her caring side. She's become more experienced and adept at using her powers, and isn't afraid to use extreme measures to exact information. As a shapeshifter, she can model her appearance to her desire, which is usually that of a green-skinned female humanoid based on Mary Logan as a teenager, with amber eyes and shoulder-length red hair. Though after 5 years she now keeps her hair shorter at length, but it still grows longer over the months, which she must be doing consciously, because she's a shapeshifter. It's because the hair won't naturally grow if you're just pretending it exists. So she has to be consciously slowly growing her hair, which is interesting to me. And at 6, Tara Markov. Also known as Tara, had manifested the ability to manipulate Earth. She can levitate Earth, manipulate its shape and configuration, like raising the floor to make a shield, or alter its state, like turn hard Earth into a substance similar to quicksand. So basically she's the DC version of an Earthbender. Tara was a child when her powers emerged. Markov's parents freaked out though and thought that she was possessed by evil. She was abandoned and forced to live in the streets eating out of dumpsters. So Deathstroke was contracted by Brother Blood, leader of Hive and the Church of Blood. He eventually wanted Deathstroke to capture all of the Teen Titans for him. Deathstroke heard of Tara Markov and her powers, and he devised a plan to use her as a spy and, if needed, a bargaining chip. He also went to Markovia and intervened in an attempted public execution. Tara was tied up to a vehicle and dragged around while the mob chanted for her death, calling her a witch and a demon. Deathstroke sliced the head off the man who was holding a gun to Tara's head, and she was later taken in as the latest member of the Teen Titans team. Halfway through in at number 5, Wonder Girl. Cassie Sandsmark was the second person to be called Wonder Girl, the first being Donna Troy. Cassie was the daughter of Dr. Helena Sandsmark and the Greek god Zeus. She spent most of her time at her mother's place of work, the Gateway City Museum of Antiquities, where she had a penchant for getting into trouble. She quickly befriended her mother's new employee, though, Wonder Woman, and was eager to help her. During a fight with a Doomsday clone and another battle with Decay, she created a costume and used magical acquirements, the Sandals of Hermes and the Gauntlet of Atlas to be exact, to help Wonder Woman, much to her mother's horror. Cassie later had the opportunity to ask Zeus for a boon and requested real superpowers. Zeus granted her request but gave Dr. Sandsmark the ability to deactivate them. Dr. Sandsmark, however, reluctantly accepted her daughter's wish to be a superhero and rarely, if ever, used this ability, and Artemis was assigned to be her teacher. Zeus giving her mom the ability to turn off those powers though is actually probably the most sensible thing someone has ever done in the DC universe, straight up. Good on you, Zeus, bro. This is the most sensible version of Zeus I think I've seen, at least in this instance. And in 4, Damian Wayne. Sometime after Batman became a public hero, he fought Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins. During his adventure, he met Raz's daughter, Talia al Ghul. The two young adults fell for each other and, after a brief fling, they conceived a child. Bruce was unaware of the child's conception though and returned to crime fighting for years. Talia, on the other hand, taking advantage of the hero's impressive genes, believed their child to be the perfect heir, and the child was born and given the name Damian. Talia then used the League's extensive scientific resources to inorganically speed up the child's aging, giving him the physiology of a 10-year-old in less than 5 years, which was also used as a plot device to make sense as to why he would be meeting his father. Eventually though, when Talia deemed that Damian was ready, she allowed him to go to Gotham and meet his father, the Batman. Batman was surprised to learn that he had a secret son with a supervillain, but sought to learn more about the boy anyway. Despite his intense training to become a remorseless assassin, Damian was sympathetic to his father's vigilanteism in Gotham and volunteered to become his next sidekick. Batman agreed and granted Damian the mantle of Robin, his 4th ward to use the name, which should already kind of indicate the path of this thing kind of takes there, Damian, so maybe not serve yourself up as a human sacrifice for character building purposes next time. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Kid Flash. Bartholomew Bart Allen is a speedster from the year 2056 and the grandson of Barry Allen. When he came to the past, he joined the team under the name Impulse, and after Wally West's death, he took on the mantle of Kid Flash. He later joined the Outsiders. But given the dire situation that his time is in, Bart is serious and slightly jaded, who was greatly appreciative of his extended family in the past. Whether accidental or intentional, Bart constantly spoils information for people about the future, such as revealing Robin and Nightwing's identities to Beast Boy, and that Iris West Allen was carrying twins. This was also adapted into the CW show The Flash, where Bart and Nora are actually Barry's kids instead of grandkids, and they take on the name of the Tornado Twins over Dawn and Dawn, since they don't exist. I guess Flash writers thought that was a little too much. Penultimately, in at number 2, Raven. Raven, also known as Rachel Roth, is a superhero with magical abilities and a prominent member of the Teen Titans. Raven is a tele-empathetic, and she can teleport, send out her soul self, which can fight, like physically, manifest as a force field, manipulate objects and others as like with telekinesis, and it can also act as Raven's eyes and ears away from her body. Raven was born the half-breed daughter of a human mother named Angela Roth and the demon overlord Emperor Trigon. Eventually, she learned that Trigon was planning to come to her dimension and vowed to stop him. She initially approached the Justice League, which they refused, on the advice of Zatanna, who sensed her demonic parentage. In desperation, she reformed the Titans as the new Teen Titans to fight against her father. The team was eventually able to defeat Trigon and seal him in an interdimensional prison. However, Raven still had to fight her father's influence, because he wasn't actually completely destroyed, so she was still part demon. Yeah. And finally, in at number 1, Superboy. Superboy, aka Con-El or Connor Kent, yeah, you know why I mentioned that, was a genomorph, a binary clone of Superman and Lex Luthor, and a founding member of the Young Justice team. On February 25th, 2019, Superboy had revealed himself to the world and left the team in order to become a member of the Outsiders. After he became engaged to Miss Martian, the couple traveled to Mars to prepare for their upcoming wedding, but he historically sacrificed himself to protect the Martians from a gene bomb. Before this though, Aqualad, Robin, and Kid Flash discovered the Genomorph Project and Superboy, whom they liberated. The 4 youths stood up to their mentors and declared that they were ready to prove themselves as heroes. While Batman considered their argument, Kid Flash and Superboy stayed with him. Together they faced the Terror Twins at the Central City Mall, and they formed a covert ops team where they were given their own headquarters in Mount Justice. And they were introduced to Miss Martian, which would ultimately lead to Superboy's death. So, sorry bro. In at 10, Hammerhead. Growing up, his father would berate him for speaking Italian in their Russian household and would beat the boy with a hammer when punishing him. So, you know, Father of the Year right there. I guess that's kinda how he got the name. In school, he would later lie and say that he was Italian, only for a bully named Rico to reveal his lie and then steal the hat he wore, showing the ugly scars on his head from frequent hammer blows. Rico and his girlfriend would be the kills that Hammerhead needed to join the mob though. Hammerhead convinced the mob that he was Italian, which was necessary since they didn't really accept inferior stock, as they would call it, and he eventually killed his father with a much bigger hammer than his father ever used on him. Poetic justice. When his head was shattered in a brawl though, Jonas Harrow discovered him in an alley and operated on him, replacing his broken skull with one made of steel, whereas some versions make this an adamantium head instead. He would later go on to get a full body robotic upgrade from Mr. Negative after being shot in the back of the head with a special bullet, which would have killed him. This is definitely some alpha energy.
Coming in at number 9, we have Crossbones. A genetically enhanced mercenary with a hazy past, Crossbones wandered the world as an independent gun for hire until finally catching the attention of the villainous Red Skull. With proficiency in most forms of weapon known to man and a particular liking for stiletto blade enhanced gauntlets, Crossbones doesn't really have an ulterior motive or dreams of world domination, but rather will do whatever grisly task a supervillain is willing to pay him for, such as the time at the end of Civil War where he took advantage of the chaos and seemingly assassinated Captain America. Whatever the nasty job, Crossbones is willing to do it, and that's what makes him such a dangerous villain.
And at 8, Silvermane. As a teacher, Silvio Manfredi joined a criminal organization known as the Magia. With his cunning and superior fighting skills, Manfredi rose to the top of the Magia's ranks. He later became the head of a family, which in mob terms just meant a group of loyal members, not actually like related or anything. By creating gang wars, he increased the power of the Manfredi family, and in the process he also increased the power of the Magia as a whole, which pleased his superiors, obviously, because more power, it's more power. Manfredi also married a woman named Catherine even father to son, but when he was middle-aged, his hair became white, which led to the nickname that he grew to accept, Silvermane. Crime fighters Cloak and Dagger decided to take down Silvermane because of his role in illegal drug trafficking in New York City. Dagger attacked Silvermane and nearly killed him using her powers. However, doctors saved Silvermane's life by transporting his brain, most of his head, and other vital organs into a robotic body that would then provide him with superhuman strength. Which is nuts, and exactly why we shouldn't try and put our brains in robots. I've been saying this since this list. Don't do it.
Coming in at number 7, we have Boomerang. Originally hailing from Australia and given his identity as a stereotypical joke by an offshoot of Hydra, Boomerang has no actual superhuman abilities, just an incredibly gifted throwing arm that has been utilized over the years to throw more and more intricate, high-tech boomerangs. Best known as a thorn in Spider-Man's side and one of the founding members of the superior foes of Spider-Man, Boomerang would eventually begin to have a change of heart after becoming Peter Parker's roommate and getting a bit too over his head with his relationship to the Kingpin. Nevertheless, Boomerang's incredible accuracy and the quality of his high-tech gadgets means that he's not a villain to underestimate.
And at 6, Tombstone. Lonnie Lincoln was born and raised in Harlem, New York. He had a congenital disorder characterized by the complete absence of pigment in his skin, which made him an outcast among the children his age. He also had a problem with his vocal cords, making him speak in whispers. The only student who didn't ostracize Lincoln was aspiring reporter Joe Robinson, causing Lonnie to misconstrue this lack of hostility as a token of friendship. 8 years after their senior year, Tombstone had grown to become a mob enforcer in Philadelphia, where Robertson happened to work as a reporter. When Lincoln tried to kill crime boss Saulsy Montana, his employee witnessed the murder and contacted the newspaper where Robbie worked. Robbie was about to meet with Hipper when Tombstone killed him and arrived at their point of meeting, only to find Tombstone taunting him with the man's corpse. Tombstone let Robbie go though, just because they used to be friends, but later taunted him on the phone, prompting Robbie to flee with his wife back to New York, where he became an acclaimed reporter for the Daily Bugle. This dude is freaking messed up, and if you've seen him in like the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, that version's even freakier.
Coming in at number 5, we have Typhoid Mary. A very powerful mutant with multiple personality disorder, Mary is capable of telekinesis, telepathy, and manipulating fire when under the influence of her more violent Typhoid and Bloody Mary personas. Her transformations between personalities are so intense that even Daredevil was not able to tell after encountering 2 personalities that they were the same person, despite his increased senses supposedly being immune to her trickery. Despite being a mutant, Mary has most often fought with both Daredevil and Spider-Man, giving these street-level heroes a headache as they try to deal with multiple violent women in one deadly body.
And at 4, Kingpin. A crime boss is one thing. A crime boss that to the public is a well-respected philanthropist and businessman is something else. But this businessman is like 300 pounds of muscle. Wilson Fisk is an absolute madman who runs most of New York's and Las Vegas's criminal underworld. However, things get even more intense after his wife is killed, so he doesn't end up retiring, which he was actually going to do, but you know, then they killed his wife. After the murder of his wife, not only did he resume leadership of his former organization, but he also turned over his files on other criminal leaders to the law through the costumed crime fighter of Daredevil. Kingpin actually helped Daredevil, except now this time he had the motive of ridding himself of any and all rivals. The ploy actually worked though, and as a result of the evidence in the files, many crime leaders both inside and outside the Magia were convicted. In the ensuing power vacuum, the Kingpin rebuilt his coalition stronger than ever before. He moved on to control a great majority of non-Magia East Coast gangs dealing in conventional crimes, and the Kingpin's organization became stronger than any single Magia family in the New York area.
Coming in at number 3, we have Barracuda, the arch nemesis of the Punisher. An optimistic and smiling serial killer and gangster, the Barracuda is everything the Punisher stands against and more. Originally just hired by a larger criminal organization to assassinate create Frank Castle, the Barracuda's rivalry with the Punisher became personal when their ensuing battle caused the Barracuda to lose both an eye and all the fingers on his right hand. The Barracuda might not have any superpowers himself, but his depravity and lust for violence are essentially unmatched, with multiple moments over the years that rank as some of Marvel's edgiest, such as snorting drugs off of a fresh human skull and engaging in literal cannibalism.
Penultimately, into number 2, The Hood. After seeing Electro fight Daredevil as a child, the life of a supervillain really enticed Parker Robbins. With a mother in need of constant medical care, he soon dropped out of high school to steal money to give her better care. His cousin John told him about some valuable material perfect to steal at a nearby warehouse, and together, they broke into it. They were about to leave when they were attacked by a demon in a cloak. Peter shot the being and assumed that he had killed it, but not wanting to leave empty-handed, he took the cloak and the boots. For some reason, I don't know why he thought you were gonna get any money for it, but whatever. On the way home, he was jumped for his shoes and used the boots to escape. And upon finding out that the boots actually gave him the ability to walk on air, he took the cloak over to John's apartment, where he found out that the cloak gave him powers as well, originating from the demon Dormammu, though he didn't know it at the time. A dude with a cloak and boots giving him a fraction of the powers of Dormammu? Yeah, that's a number 2 for me. Pun intended now.
And coming in at our top spot, we've got to go with the classic Daredevil villain, Bullseye. An incredibly skilled assassin with nearly perfect accuracy, Bullseye ranks as one of the greatest villains that heroes like Spider-Man and Daredevil have ever had to face. Bullseye was responsible for the death of Elektra and appears to have zero regard for life or any sense of moral goodness, with even other members of the Dark Avengers being disgusted at his lust for murder when he was briefly a member of their team. While Bullseye often finds himself under the employ of characters such as the Kingpin or Norman Osborn, his rather unique powers and his complete lack of empathy make him potentially the most deadly street-level villain of all.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Genie. We'll start with one that seems to cause some continuity clashes, but it's plenty entertaining anyway. Throughout the 2099 universe, we meet descendants and followers of heroes that made Marvel so famous. Great-grandchildren of classic heroes are all about, and oftentimes the original supers have died, disappeared, or become decrepit to fight crime. New folks come around to replace the old folks. It's the way of the world. However, in many Marvel stories, Doctor Strange manages to outlive all sorts of folks thanks to his magical abilities. This is not the case in 2099 though, as he's nowhere to be found. In his place is another person who goes by the name Strange, and this time it's a woman. Also known as Genie, or possibly Sorceress Supreme, this magical mistress realized she had magical abilities and worked to perfect them on her own. Idolizing her older brother, she followed him one day and witnessed him being attacked by Skrulls. Attempting to scare them away, she tried to conjure an illusion of a Lovecraftian monster and ended up actually summoning an eldritch monstrosity. This didn't end up well for anyone, as she ended up accidentally killing her brother. Whoops. From there on, she underwent more training and started helping other heroes in various capacities. With all sorts of powers fueled by the mystic arts, she can do a whole lot of wicked things. From healing injuries to teleportation to casting sleep spells, she's got it all under control. Plus, she is immune to timeline distortions, which proves to be helpful quite often. So don't mess with Mademoiselle Strange. Coming in at number 9, Deadpool. Wade Wilson who? Well, actually it seems that Wade is indeed still around, but in 2099 his daughter Warda has taken up the mantle, and she seems to enjoy torturing him, which is interesting. Add in a mother who was once queen of the undead and you've got one hell of a mix of powers. She has Wade's regenerative powers as well as some possible vampirism from her mother's side. Absolutely wild. To make her potentially even more effective, she doesn't seem to share her father's sense of humor. Less goofing around, less cracking wise, and more violence. The weapon proficiency is still there too. Nice. Warda spends most of her time attempting to figure out where her mother is and eventually finds her true family, so good for her. Coming in at number 8, Moon Knight. Let's go, Moon Knight. In 2099, they're actually on the moon, and she's no longer Mark Spector, but an unknown individual with a totally secret identity. How cool is that? Wielding a bevy of powerful gadgets and weapons, Moon Knight acts as the server of vigilante justice on the moon-based city of Adelan. Stalking the Night, or whatever version of Night is on the moon, she keeps the many Inhumans who call that place home as safe as she can. After accidentally wandering into the forbidden citadel of the Watcher, she convinces Uatu to let the Fantastic Four constructs to stick around longer until they've lived up to their former lives. Good on you, Moon Knight. Coming in at number 7, we've got Ghost Rider. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed that Nick Cage isn't the Ghost Rider in 2099. This implies that Hollywood's most controversial leading man doesn't make it until then, and that's just a shame. Thankfully, Ghost Rider is still wicked cool in the future and comes packing some new weapons and powers. Gone are the days that Ghost Rider is a literal magical skeleton flying around on his flaming motorcycle. In 2099, Vengeance got an update. Kenshiro Zero Cochran, computer hacker extraordinaire, ends up with his mind inside of an insanely powerful robot body. A Cybertech 101 warbot to be exact. And this robot is jam-packed with all sorts of futuristic weaponry, from eye lasers, to a hand that can transform into a whole bunch of weapons, to a retractable chainsaw embedded in his arm. Oh, and also a 50 caliber gun and grenades. Still a weapon for vengeance though, Ghost Rider manages to project the image of a flaming skull, just like the OG, using his holographic capabilities. Now that's how you future-proof your superhero. Coming in at number 6, Hulk. Our futuristic gamma-fueled beast is definitely a contender for strongest ever. However, unlike the original Hulk, he's not quite immortal. I won't get into the nitty-gritty here, but even a base power higher than the first Green Giant isn't enough to keep you alive against all odds. Too bad too, because this is a really cool reimagining of a classic hero. In 2099, a movie producer named John Eisenhart decides he wants to do a movie about the Knights of Banner. This group worships Bruce Banner like a god and tends to move around all over the place. When Eisenhart finds out he can't get the rights to their story, he turns them into the police, but feels guilty afterwards. He tries to find a way to help them out, but gets caught in the blast of a gamma bomb, turning him into a brand new green monstrosity. He's got more base strength than the original Hulk, sharp teeth and claws useful for ripping and tearing, and even holds onto his human intelligence once transformed. Able to lift up to 150 tons and leap hundreds of feet in a single bound, this version of the Hulk is a force to be reckoned with. Coming in at number 5, we've got Thor. This might come as a bit of a surprise, but in the future, a lot of people worship superheroes. And a lot of the time, those who revere these supernatural figures are interested in attaining these godly powers for themselves. In 2099, a subset of people have decided to give themselves to Thor, mind, body, and spirit. Known as members of the Church of Thor, or Thorites, they all have the hallmarks of many other major religions, down to the places of worship and religious leaders. Cecil McAdams was a reverend of the Church of Thor, and was actually chosen to take up the mantle of the Norse god of thunder himself. Through technological advances and a whole lot of self-deception, McAdams ended up with almost identical powers to the god that he worshipped. This resulted in some less than stellar mental issues though, as he went a little power crazy and tried to rid an entire city of mortals. Coming in at number 4, we've got Exodus. Born as Bennett du Paris back in the 1300s, this mutant is all about changing up the world order. He has and always will believe that mutants should be in charge of the world, with humans as the inferior race. This was true before 2099 and remains true in said futuristic world. Showing up after a long sleep, Exodus attempted to force his rule upon X Nation. They weren't too happy with this, so Exodus defeated them. Using telepathy, teleportation, and resurrection, he's almost undefeatable. Factor in that he refused to save the humans before Mademoiselle Strange teleported the survivors away, and you've got one bad, powerful dude. Coming in at number 3, we've got Punisher. Even way off at the turn of the next century, Punisher's gotta punish. Frank Castle no longer wears the gigantic skull, instead it's a guy by the name of Jake Gallows, which is appropriate. This ex-Thorite actually grew up with Cecil McAdams as his reverend, but we'll save that story for a rainy day. He lost his family to violence and then came across the old war journals of the original Punisher. With this, he decided he would dedicate his life to punishing. At first, he was a member of the pay-per-use police service, but eventually ended up as Doom's Minister of Punishment. As one would expect, this makes it very dangerous to be deemed a criminal in the future. Strapping, angry, and constantly firing guns in both hands, the Punisher does what he does best. Hell, he even has a hand in killing the new Thor. Coming in at number 2, we've got Spider-Man. If you want a crazy origin story, look no further. In the future, there's one company that seems to have an upper hand over the rest. Alchemax. Miguel O'Hara was a scientist working for them, reluctantly performing genetic experiments on less than willing test subjects. After turning a man into a horrid beast that died quickly, O'Hara decided he'd had enough. However, when discussing this with his boss, he accepted a drink that turned out to be laced with Rapture, a highly addictive substance that bonds with the DNA of the person using it. This was supposed to keep O'Hara addicted, and therefore an employee of the company that produced it for the foreseeable future. In order to reverse this addiction though, O'Hara attempted to rewrite his his own genetic code. This procedure was sabotaged by his boss, but ended up including some spider DNA in the process. Thus, Spider-Man 2099 was born. Jam-packed with spider powers, but actually lacking any form of spider sense, O'Hara decided to start fighting crime. Donning a spider suit to hide his identity, he puts his powers to use. Increased strength, agility, stamina, regeneration, some telepathy, claws and fangs, and even spinnerets that generate organic web, and more. Spider-Man is always a fan favorite, that's for sure. Finally, at number 1, we've got Dr. Doom. Unlike most of the other heroes on this list, Doom isn't a clone or a copy or even offspring of another individual, it's still Doom. After disappearing for decades, Dr. Doom decided to upgrade his armor and make a triumphant return, and triumphantly return he does. Coming back in full force, he manages to retake the United States and force his way into a leadership role. Like I said earlier, he employs Jake Gallows as his Minister of Punishment and begins ruling with an iron fist. There really is no stopping Doom, even in the future.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Deadpool Kid. Wade in the Wild West. Sign me up. Wade Wilson of Earth 1108 made his first appearance in Deadpool Merc with a Mouth issue 7. Now when we meet him, he's wanted for bank robbery, arson, software piracy, and of course stampeding pygmy goats through an orphanage, you know, everyday things that we always do. And then even in the dusty days, Deadpool still finds a way to cause trouble. He would constantly boast about him wanting to take over the town, and he had his sights set on Sheriff Fury and bounty hunter Logan. After getting shot in the head by Earth 616 Deadpool, our main Deadpool, the Kid went down. But he didn't stay down, of course. He survived and was next seen alongside Dreadpool in the hunt for evil Deadpools in the universe. Number 9, Kidpool. Similar name, but much different. Kidpool comes from Earth 10330. Now he made his first appearance in Prelude to Deadpool Core issue 2, and he started his days out as a student of the Xavier Orphanage for Troubled Boys. Now due to his abrasive personality, he of course didn't fit in with the other super kids, so he was lonely most of the time. Now one day he was sent to detention with Scott Summers, and Wade convinced Scott that they should both break out and go to prom instead. I agree, I mean detention during prom, come on, that's just cruel. But in order to convince Scotty Boy to be a rebel, Wade promised him he'd help Scott get with Jean Grey. That ought to do the trick. While at prom, Kidpool caused trouble and even fought Logan. It was a hot mess. Mistress Storm stopped the fight and Kidpool was on his way out when Deadpool arrived and also recruited this Kidpool. And before we continue with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be great. It helps our channel out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thanks for your support. Now let's get right back to this video. Number 8, Dreadpool. In the reality of Earth 12101, the X-Men brought Wade to Dr. Ben Brighton, aka Psycho Man, in an attempt to cure Wade. Now they wanted him to shut down all these voices in Wade's head, but he didn't do that. He actually did the opposite. Wade was now encouraged to kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. And he started out by going after the Fantastic Four. Reed and the Thing were toast in just a couple of pages. Sue Storm held Dreadpool off by making his head explode, but once he healed, she was next to go. Dreadpool stole a device from Reed Richards that he used to take down the Watcher. So right off the bat, things get ugly. Number 7, Evil Deadpool. Keeping those sinister vibes going, Evil Deadpool is from our 616 main universe. He actually came to life during the pages of Deadpool Volume 4, issue 44. Now it actually all started with Ella Whitby. She was a psychiatrist who was obsessed with Wade Wilson. She was so obsessed that she would keep body parts that he lost over time. She would collect parts of him and then keep them in her freezer, you know, right next to the ice packs, of course. So when Deadpool found out about this creepy old cold collection, he threw them all in the dumpster. He just got rid of them. But that was a mistake because once those body parts thawed out, they fused together to make another evil Deadpool. Just the smell of that freezer alone, I would have tapped out by day 3. Number 6, Wolverine Pool. This next one is a total badass, one of my favorites if you ask me. Brief, but definitely memorable. First appearing in Cable in Deadpool issue 46, we see Wade Wilson after he's undergone the Weapon X program. He has a skeleton bonded with adamantium, and then he's recruited by Dreadpool to take on the evil Deadpool core members. So he joined the battle and killed Deadpool Pulp, but during the fight, main Wade tossed a grenade full of bugs at Wolverine Pool. So the grenade went off and the bugs chewed at Wade's skin, just chewed him apart until nothing was left over except the adamantium skeleton and claws. Definitely the grossest way to go out, that's for sure. Number 5, Death Mask. While I mentioned a botched surgery earlier with Wade, this next one went exactly as planned. On Earth 11683, Reed Richards was able to remove a lethal brain tumor from Wade's head, so now he was better off than ever. No evil voices, and now he was actually a genius. But did he change the world one revolutionary invention at a time? Nope, he was a master criminal. But still, he's smart, I don't know. He built an empire. Wade went by the name Death Mask and killed that world's Victor Von Doom, and his outfit was actually a red version of Doom's. It was pretty sweet, I'm not gonna lie. Even after Death Mask was beaten by our main Deadpool, it didn't end there. Death Mask made a deal with Mephisto in order to release monsters on Earth, one of those monsters being Infernal Hulk. Ouch. Number 4, Dogpool. Wade Wilson of Earth 103173, aka Dogpool, made his first appearance in Prelude to Deadpool Corps issue 3. Now Wilson was a dog being used as a test subject for Mascara X, this hot new product that could replenish itself after just one use. How beautiful and lovely and convenient, might I add. Now this version obviously is inspired from real life animal testing and abuse that happens, so it's pretty sweet when Wilson gets superpowers. Now they thought the dog didn't make it after a test, his body turned all corpse-like, so they got rid of it. But those regenerative abilities brought this pet back to life. A circus truck just ended up going by and seeing this immortal dog, and then Deadpool became the starring act of their show. Come and see the death-defying hound, what a headline. He was working there until Deadpool came and also recruited him for the Deadpool Corps. Number 3, Deadman Wade. Coming from the Age of Apocalypse storyline on Earth 295, Deadman Wade was initially part of Apocalypse's Pale Riders. Danny Moonstar would just torture him non-stop. That was his whole thing. But that's gotta be a bit distracting, right? While the Riders were seeking out Avalon, Damask was so annoyed by the torture and the sounds that she strangled Moonstar to death. She just couldn't take it anymore. It's like when my sister would sing Taylor Swift, I'm like, a 4-hour drive, come on. So Deadman Wade wasn't too happy at this point, but when they finally arrived to Avalon, Wade's attack on innocent people was so much that Nightcrawler deemed it necessary to end his life. And he did so by teleporting away whilst grabbing his head. If you want to see Deadman Wade in more agony, begin so with Excalibur issue 1. Number 2, Ultimate Deadpool. Wade E. Wilson from the Ultimate Comic Run, Earth 1610 that is, made his first appearance at Ultimate Spider-Man issue 91. Now we had a pretty rough time when it comes to the Ultimates. The Ultimates are a different story, different origins, but Wade's is still bad. See, in Ultimate Spider-Man, Wade E. Wilson gets recruited to hunt down mutants on live television, which sounds like a pretty cool gig, but the government figured this is what the people want, and honestly, they're not too far off. People love tuning in. This is like the hot show. It's the talk of the town. And his appearance is even more shocking once Spider-Man unmasks him, and the fact that he does so on live television causes Wadey to go nuts. And it was even worse than that because Spider-Man made him feel horrible for how he looked. He said his face smelled like a KFC dumpster on a hot day. What a roast. Oh my god, Spider-Man, relax. And also in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 92, Spider-Man is about to be unmasked himself, but Deadpool prevents it from happening. He says to respect the mask. How ironic. Number 1, Lady Deadpool. We just met Lady Loki and she kind of stole the entire show on Disney+, so we gotta end this list with Lady Deadpool. Wanda Wilson from Earth 3010 made her first appearance in Deadpool Merc of the Mouth issue 7. Now this version of Deadpool cared, dare I say. She wanted to at least feel like she belonged and was part of a bigger, more important movement. So she led an assault force against the crooked General America, which was an evil Captain America in that world, and then she eventually found her place leading the Deadpool Corps, that team I've been mentioning throughout this entire list. In fact, Lady Deadpool was the one to tip off our main 616 Wade on the whole operation. Wade actually tossed Headpool at General America, but then he bit his arm off. Headpool was from the zombie universe, so Wade had to take the General's infected arm with him after he left Wanda's Earth. All the blood, all the arms, all the Deadpools, all the fun.